Good evening and welcome to the Grand Prairie City Council meeting for Monday, September 16th, 2013. I'd ask everyone in attendance to rise and join us in singing O Canada. Thank you to the Grand Prairie Boys Choir for the audio, and thank you to the National Film Board for the images of our country. We'd move on to the adoption of the previous council meeting minutes. Councillor Crokin.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I move the minutes of the City Council meeting held September 3rd, 2013 be adopted.
Thanks very much, Councillor Crokin. Did anyone note any errors or omissions in that set of minutes? Seeing nothing, then I'll call for the vote. Thank you. And that motion carries. And we move to the adoption of the agenda. Councillor Wong.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Given. I move that Council adopt the agenda as presented with two changes. The deletion of item 9.1.1, which is the TELUS Communications Tower, and the addition of item 9.4.1, the tender for Muskosipi Park entrance feature.
Thanks very much, Councillor Wong. Just to speak to that deletion, we don't do that very often. That motion was something actually that Council had delegated authority to make that presentation to the Community Growth Committee. So that ability didn't have to come, that motion didn't have to come to Council. So good catch by administration. Any other discussion on the agenda as amended? Seeing nobody ringing in, then I will call for the vote. Thank you. And that motion carries as well, and that brings us to the delegation portion of the agenda. This is an opportunity for anybody in the community to come forward to address council on any community-related matter that isn't the subject of a public hearing. So is there anybody that would like to come and make a presentation to council on any community matter that isn't the subject of a public hearing? Sure, come forward. I see two different groups there, so don't you? I see the lady in the front here, and then the couple in the middle. So maybe we'll just start from the front. Please come to the presenters table and introduce yourself for the record. I know it is actually pretty intimidating sitting there. Well, I tell you what, take a seat, make yourself welcome, and we're happy to have you here. So please don't be intimidated.
My purpose in being here today is to seek your assistance in solving an ongoing drainage problem I have with my neighboring home.
Sure, ma'am. I'm sorry to interrupt. I know that I don't want to throw you off, but if you could just introduce yourself, just so that our recording secretary.
My name is Lorena Ramsanker.
That's excellent. That's all you needed to do.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt.
I have been in Grand Prairie since 1971. My purpose in being here today is to seek your assistance in solving an ongoing drainage problem I have. To save some time, I would like to read a quote from a fax letter which I did send to the city of Grand Prairie. It would save a little bit of time. And it basically goes through the drainage, the address. The purpose of this letter is to document my several contacts with your office regarding the drainage problems on the eastern edge of my property and the seeming inability of the city of Grand Prairie to enforce its drainage bylaws in that respect. As pointed out many times over the past year, the total drainage from my neighbor's house runs directly onto this property. And this was put into place last summer. These are older homes. In fact, the pipe is now fastened onto the connecting fence. This has resulted in serious ice problems around my back gate. We share a driveway. This required my almost constant attention all winter to ensure the safety of anyone, including myself, entering the backyard. My husband and I purchased this home in 1973. I've lived there since that time. As a senior, I am well aware of the medical implications of falling on ice. I am also aware of the liability issues. It is to these ends that I request the City of Grand Prairie enforcement of its bylaws. To update this letter, it was dated on August the 4th of this year. My last contact with Development Services was on August the 8th of this year. I left for holidays on August the 9th, and I returned on August the 18th. On my return, I found a business card stuck in my front door with and also a message on my phone from Development Services stating that the matter would be looked after by October 31st. It's by August 31st, excuse me, August 31st. It's now September 16th. I am really needing a permanent solution to this problem soon. And I'm looking to this city to help me find a solution. I would be pleased to answer any questions. I appreciate your hearing me out.
Well, for somebody who is nervous, you did very, very well. Thank you. We do have an opportunity for questions, so if there's any council members who'd like to have a question for Mr. Ramsanker. Councillor Wong.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Given. Mrs. Ramsanker, are you talking about a sump pump line that's pointed towards your house? No.
The house is, I'm on 113th Avenue behind Crystal Park School. We're on the hill.
Okay.
Those houses still have the weeping tile. The weeping tile on most of them had rusted out because of the 4 dry years we've had, but they've now been opened up and they're working well. So unless you wanted a sump pump, it was never mandatory that you put one in.
Okay. So your neighbors, this is natural drainage you're talking about when it rains and when the snow melts?
Well, the drainage from the house was going different places. It was deliberately put on the fence to be there. The only change that has been made over the last year is a lock on the gate.
What I'm trying to understand is where the water's coming from. Is it coming off the east trough, downspout, a sump pump?
The eavesdrop from the total house
Okay.
are coming onto my back, where my back gate is, where my house is, where people come in. Last year, the meter reader would have had a problem coming into my backyard. They now do it differently. But I had to, I don't know how many sacks of salt I had to put there because if somebody falls, I'm liable. If I fall, my life is done. If I break bones, I'm just not going to heal. So I have major issues, and for me to change it means a major investment in changing the driveway. We share a driveway, so I've got half. It would be a major investment, but also I have window wells on that side of the house, so it would be a major construction type difference, which I simply can't afford.
Okay. So my understanding is that our bylaws are really poor at addressing drainage problems after people have taken possession of their houses. So I know that's something that we're currently working on. When we do get staff working on the issue, they typically can resolve an issue between neighbors just by talking to them and discussing the situation. So trying to think of...
There's bylaws on how far from the edge of your property you can drain your water. I believe I got a copy of them from the city.
Yeah, and then, but when it runs off, it doesn't help.
When the house was built, this was done a year ago. So this is a whole new drainage system, sending it that way. Where the water was drained other directions, we're on a hill.
I see others in the queue, and so we'll make sure that we give everybody a chance to ask questions for the delegation from Mr. Amsnecker.
Thanks for the answers.
Councillor McLean on the corner there.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I think it's a big issue. We're having a land use bylaw tonight, and that's being put aside about lot grading. And one of the reasons is after people move into their homes, new ones that are built, they do stuff to their land that might affect their neighbor. And so, as you're saying, eavesdrops, the water that comes down, if they direct it towards the fence, they might be moving it maybe too far from their house to try to avoid from their driveway of getting it away. So you were saying they put a drainage out towards the fence and it goes along the fence?
We have a chain link fence between the houses and we share a driveway. All of the drainage from the house has been attached to that fence, so it comes under and it comes right into my backyard because I'm on a bit of a level.
And
it was never there before. It was draining in other parts.
Yes.
And plus they had the weeping tile.
I think it's a very important issue, and the new homes being built are even closer, and they have the sumps pouring out, and they have the eavesdrops water. So that's a big issue coming in the city down the road for builders and developers to start looking at this a lot more. And I hope that the city gets that resolved and the drainage issues, because that could affect you quite a bit. Thank you.
I see a couple others. I see Councillor Crokin and then followed by Councillor Radburn. So Councillor Crokin right there.
Thanks, Mayor Given. Your neighbors, are they the homeowner, the principal homeowner, or are they renters?
Homeowners.
And what kind of a discussion did you have with them on this issue of water? I think you're a very pleasant lady. I can't imagine them not wanting to.
It was never heated. It was, when I get around to making a fence, to fence off my 3 big Rottweilers, I will look at fixing this part of the yard. Not aggravated, not an argument. I'll look after it when I get around to it, when I look after my dogs and my this and that. It's not an issue with my neighbor. It's not an issue.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I see Councillor Radburn right there.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Lorena, good evening. So I'm interested in what interactions you've had with city staff since that note was put on your door. So have you had any contact with the city or the city with you since that you came back from holidays?
No, I've got the business card. After I came back, I sent the confirmation because I wanted it on record. I really didn't want to go over there with a sledgehammer because that would be very easy for me.
That's a pretty good idea that you not do that.
But I did phone the city, and I mentioned to somebody that if it couldn't be resolved, council is my last place. I don't know where else I could go with it.
Oh, good. So you've answered my question. Yeah, that there hasn't been that contact, and there has to be. We're not going to solve the issue around the table tonight, but it gives us a way to direct, I think. Thank you.
Okay, I see you're not off the hook yet. Councillor Rice has a question for you.
Have you had any contact with enforcement services or just development services?
Enforcement services is bylaw.
Bylaw.
City bylaw.
You've had no contact with them?
I've had contact with bylaw over another issue.
Okay, but not with regards to this one?
No.
No.
But I just got a copy of the bylaws from the city. I came and they gave me.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much. I see that was all the council members in the queue that had a question for you. Ms. Ramsenker, so the way our council process goes is that we deal with the delegation business at the end of the agenda. So you're welcome to stay at the meeting, or you could tune in on Eastlink tonight when you go home and watch from the comfort of your own home, or most likely what will happen is we will have somebody from administration contact you to let you know what the outcome tonight was.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for receiving me. I feel a lot better.
You're always welcome. Thank you for coming tonight. So this is still the delegation portion of the agenda. As I said, an opportunity for anybody to come forward to speak to any community-related matter that isn't the subject of a public hearing, which we'll deal with a little bit later on in the agenda. I saw that there was maybe another group that wanted to come forward to make a presentation. Sure. You've seen it once now. Ms. Ramsenker broke the ice for us. And so you can just come and join us at the presenters table and introduce yourselves, and please be welcome. Feel free to rearrange the chairs if it's more comfortable for you.
My name is Lance Silver. This is my wife, Robin. We'd like to bring up a safety concern that we have with the road in front of our house on 92nd Street, just north of 100th Ave. I don't know who all's been involved. Some of you may already know of the developments that the city is planning to make 2 lanes in both directions on that busy road. And we've been having some parking issues, and not really sure if it's on the bylaw side of things, but we've talked to Norman Kyle at Development Services to see what can be done. I believe on around September 2011, the laneage was changed from parking lane just by the painted lines on the road to a dash line to designate free flow both directions in that southbound direction on 92nd Street. There is, I think there's 9 houses altogether, something like that, on that short little stretch. And most of us have front driveways where we access our home. Now, with that parking lane being now a free flow lane, we've got, once again, after talking with Norman Kyle, we've got restricted parking between 7 and 9 a.m. and 4 and 6 p.m. Other than that, we are apparently good to go with parking on the road. However, general motoring public doesn't see that, and we've had numerous issues. I've had 2 of my former employers' truck mirrors smashed off. I don't know if that was intended just as a shot towards my old employer or just happenstance, who knows. When it comes to getting into and out of our driveway, unfortunately, those restricted parking times are the time zones where we are leaving to work and coming home from work as well. And it makes it very difficult for us to get into our driveway and out of our driveway at those times as well. We usually back in because it's, especially in that location, it's always safer to back in to the driveway than to back out of the driveway. And it's not uncommon to spend 10, sometimes 15 minutes to get into our driveway at the end of the day. And during that time, traffic lines up quite a ways up the hill, I'm sure. And we get lots of horn honking, lots of obscene gestures. And when the vehicle is unoccupied, we get situations like beer cans thrown at the back windows. I just had a wonderful surprise dropped on my truck yet again yesterday. Apple cores, cup with nuts. It's like like I say, since September 2011, it hasn't really gone away. It hasn't changed anything. I just want to know if there's anything that we can do to make this a little bit easier for everybody. I understand the infrastructure is only designed for a certain amount of population. Fortunately, that location, real estate is pretty limited to where we can go with that. And yeah, I don't know what solutions are out there for myself or for the city for that matter, but I know it's a big problem. In wintertime, when the snow is piled up, the kids are pretty sketched out about walking to school. That traffic moves pretty fast down there. Speed zone's only 50. It's not uncommon to see 70 there. We've got some neighbors that don't have a driveway. Actually, our neighbor directly beside us actually had to make their driveway in their front yard. They were parking on their lawn for quite some time, and they just put in some gravel and made a driveway for themselves just a few months ago, I think it was. We've had 2 vehicles written off outside of our house, parked on the road. The accident occurred at 9 p.m. at night. This was after the lane or the parking restrictions have been in effect between 4 and 6 p.m. I don't, yeah, like I say, I really don't know what options we have on the city's part as well as on us as homeowners on that. I know we bought the house as it was. We had no intention of making a driveway in the backyard. We've got a nice, beautiful backyard, and we'd like to keep it that way.
Well, we are unable to because we're the only ones that have an actual garage, even though we have a garage in the front, and we cannot get between the 2 vehicles to drive around the house. It's not feasible. Yeah, it's getting worse as time goes, and now that 100th they have done the same thing now. I foresee a lot of problems, and it's going to be the first one, like coming from each direction on that time frame. They're probably going to be the ones that are going to wonder whether or not their vehicles are going to get hit. Like I said, we've had, our vehicle got rode off. I'd gotten home from work. My vehicle was parked. I had a gentleman parked behind me, a pizza delivery guy. Somebody smacked into him. It was actually hit and run and rode off his vehicle and my vehicle. Yeah. And somehow he drove away. We're not quite sure. With their, yeah, anyway. But yeah, the biggest thing is it gets really sketchy, like I said. A lot of people say, well, just drive forward into the driveway instead of, back up. It's not, because if you, at least when you're backing into your driveway, you can see what's behind you, you can see. But when it's that busy, it's really hard to back out. We've got company that actually, we can't have company unless they want to park a half a block to a block around the corner, because they don't want to park on the road because they know what we've had issues with, and our neighbors, all of them as well. Anybody who's parked on that road has dealt with the same thing. It's not common, for the horns to be honking. It's like, oh, somebody must be parked on the road, because that's all you hear is horns. Because people don't, the signs are there. All people see is no parking. They don't look at the times. They don't care.
The sign is as big as that piece of paper.
And they don't see it.
Unfortunately, where they're fastened is usually in a location with trees. But even so, something that big is difficult to read if people even read it to start with.
Okay, I do see some folks in the queue, so are you ready to take questions?
Sure.
see Councillor Monroe.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I think my question might have already been answered, but just so I'm clear, I'm assuming there's a back alley behind your house?
There is a back alley, yes.
Small one.
Yeah. Okay. And does anyone utilize parking in the back, or
We have two duplexes a few doors down from us that have one has made a rear access driveway. They do have a shared driveway out front for both sides in that same location. But the majority of us, our driveways are all in the front of the house.
Thank you.
Okay, I see Councillor McLean has a question for you as well.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I am worried about the speed. I know exactly the area you're talking about, and for the individuals that own those homes, that road is not going to get slower. It's going to get busier. And then actually this council has allocated monies to improve that road, so traffic's going to be directed more and more with businesses coming down. So a couple things I can think of is back alleys is going to become a necessity someday, and maybe it should be brought up to the city administration that certain back alleys should be graded quickly and immediately because they are in areas that need to be done. And I know your circumstance is not, but the front of the road is getting tricky. And I'd love to see, another question I'd love to see is, Swan Haven School is another area. They have them in Europe, a couple cameras, I don't know, but really get people with fines. To really know if you're coming in and speeding, you're going to get a good ticket, a real good ticket. And I think we could do a lot better on that. I believe in Europe they have it now in school zones and that when they come in, just like we have in our lights, but it could be halfway between two set of lights. Boom, you're getting a ticket. And I'd love to see that happen there. That area is bad.
One of the suggestions that Mr. Kyle at Engineering Services had brought up was possibly the lane designation signs like they have in Edmonton with the red X or the green arrow. I'm not sure if that's an option there too.
I do see some other folks that would like to ask you a question. I see Councillor Rice.
Oh,
No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
the back alley is, because we're in the older part of town, you cannot get two vehicles side by side in that back alley without running into a fence. So it's,
And my question to you was, you mentioned you had a garage. Can you access your garage from the back alley? No.
It's part of the house.
Okay, and now the other question is, if the restricted parking hours were removed, would that get rid of your problem?
Probably not.
Probably not, okay.
Probably not. Not with the city's plans to go ahead with that, with the road developments to 116th Street.
unless that remains a parking only and not a double lane, that's the only way that's going to, is put it back the way it was.
Okay.
So it's parking only.
Okay. Well, I think, yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Rice. I see Councillor O'Toole right over there.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I was going to ask you what you have for suggestions, and I see you just answered my question. So obviously you spent some time with Mr. Kyle, and he ran some ideas past you, and you probably got some ideas past him. So
yeah.
In the future, that, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are going to be twinning that 92nd Street down once we get some money in the bank.
All the way up to 100.
Yeah, so that's there is a plan in place, and we need to look at it. So thank you very much for coming in.
We attended two of the open houses that the city had for that particular location, and I talked with Hassan Shaheen over at ISL Engineering, and a suggestion he had was to possibly purchase 8 feet off the property line to build in a parking bay or some such thing. I don't know if that's an option there either.
Or to remove the center meridian to give us back the parking lane, essentially. If it's going to be doubled, they take off that center, meridian, then at least we should just about have our full parking lane back. That way, because there is kids, it's not just ours. I mean, ours are older, thankfully. Well, if you call mine older. there is younger kids on that road, and they're right there, and people don't know them at all.
Okay. I don't see anybody else in the queue for questions for you. As I said with Ms. Ramsenker, so the way our agenda goes, we'll deal with delegation business at the end of the agenda. And that's where council members will have an opportunity to make a motion or give some direction to administration on the issue that you raised for us. So as I said, you're more than welcome to stay. Our council meetings are very exciting. You probably want to stick around for all of it. You could also watch from home, or as I said, would probably ask somebody to follow up with you to let you know what action happened tonight. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
And and I understand obviously Mr. Kyle has your contact information.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much for coming tonight and making a presentation.
Thank you.
So this is still the delegation portion of the agenda. Is there anybody else that's here as a public delegation to speak on a community-related matter? I see some other folks, but I'm imagining there may be public hearing business. And so with that, then I would close the delegation portion of the agenda. We would move on to public hearings. Item 6.1, bylaw C1100-200 to amend the land use bylaw. I would call this public hearing to order and look to Mr. Welton for an introduction from administration.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're recommending that bylaw C1100-200, which is an amendment to the land use bylaw, be given second and third readings as amended. Helix Engineering, on behalf of the landowner, has submitted an application to create a new DC-12 site-specific direct control district that's very similar to the existing CS district zoning, but would allow an increase in the maximum allowable height from 2 stories to 4 stories. And then the second part of the amendment is to change the designation of 4 lots. Lot 1, Block 3, actually I'm not going to do that. And these 4 lots in Stone Ridge, and essentially rezone them from CS commercial service to DC-12 site-specific direct control. The area that is the subject of this amendment is comprised of 4 commercial lots in the Stone Ridge neighborhood. Stone Ridge is located on the south side of 68th Avenue across from the Community Knowledge Campus. The area is bounded by 67th Avenue to the south and 106th Street to the west. The eastern boundary of the subject area is another commercial lot, and vehicle access for all 4 lots will be from 67th Avenue. The 4 lots range in size from 0.35 to 0.48 hectares and are a total of approximately 0.84 hectares. All 4 lots are currently vacant because the Stone Ridge area is in the early stages of being developed. The area directly to the east, west, and south are also currently vacant. The area is within the southeast area structure plan, which designates the subject property or subject area for commercial development. Therefore, the proposed and existing commercial designation is appropriate. The Southwest ASP provides for a large commercial node in the southwest area of Grand Prairie. The ASP identifies 11 hectares of land for commercial development within the entire plan area. Of that, 10 hectares are located in the Stone Ridge area. The future commercial area adjacent to 67th Avenue across from the CKC site is planned to be approximately 6 hectares in total area when developed, and this area is 0.84 hectares of this larger commercial area. The remaining 4 hectares are proposed for the east side of 108th Street south of 68th Avenue. The subject properties are within the Stone Ridge Outline Plan, which establishes future land use at a higher resolution than the southwest area structure plan. The future land uses on map 4 contain a mix of land uses, including in single and medium density residential and commercial development, and intense institutional use for the former Nate site. And the area also includes a navigational beacon for the airport, environmental reserve, municipal reserve, and storm ponds. The single detached housing primarily follows the west bank of the Bear Creek. Multifamily residential development will be located south of 67th Avenue between the commercial area and the single detached housing. The commercial area is located along 68th to take advantage of the traffic volume and exposure that arterial road provides. Proximity to the CKC site and the Eastlink Center also provide the opportunity for commercial development uses that support uses on the CKC site. The OP is consistent with the Southwest Area Structure Plan in that it also identifies these lots for commercial development. The site is currently zoned CS commercial service in accordance with the designation in the outline plan. The purpose of the CS district is to provide for commercial development that caters to a general sector of the city and should be adjacent to an arterial road. The maximum allowable height in the CS district is 2 stories, except for mixed-use residential commercial buildings, which are allowed to be 4. The proposed amendment would create a new site-specific district that also allows office buildings to be 4 stories. All of the uses that are being proposed in the new DC district are permitted or discretionary under the current CS district, and no new uses are proposed in this DC area. The area directly to the south of these commercial lots, south of, 67th Avenue, is primarily zoned RM, medium density residential, and the RM, which allows for multifamily development such as apartments and townhouses of up to 4 stories high. In order to ensure that development in this area is constructed to a high standard of appearance, the developer has registered architectural design standards on the titles of these lots, and these guidelines and the direct control authority that the development applications would be subject to will ensure that development will have a positive effect on the appearance along 68th Avenue. So in summary, the Southwest Area Structure Plan and the Stone Ridge Outline Plan identify the subject properties and surrounding area as a large commercial node for significant commercial and multifamily residential development. Proposed maximum allowable height for office buildings would be the same as that which already exists for mixed-use apartment buildings allowed under the current zoning. Multifamily districts located between the single detached housing and the commercial area will provide a buffer between them, and allowing taller commercial development on the site allows for more commercial development within the same footprint, using the land more efficiently. Surrounding landowners were notified of this public hearing, and we did not receive any comments as a result. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Welton. At this point, any questions for administration? Okay, if not, we'll move on to presentation submission portion of the public hearing. I call for anybody who'd like to make a presentation in support of the application. Is there somebody who'd like to come forward to make a presentation in support of the application? Hello, sir. If you could introduce yourself for the recording secretary, please be welcome.
It's Randy Glenn with Helix Engineering. I'm here representing 2 landowners on these 4 lots, and we're here to answer any questions, I guess, that council may have.
Oh, thank you. Council, any questions for the delegation about this proposed direct control district or the intentions? Councilor McLean.
Thank you, Mayor Gibbon. Randy, I just a couple questions on the 4-story buildings. In the future, what are you hoping to have these as offices, doctors, dentists? What's the hope here on these buildings, with this building?
I think the goal is a professional type building, so the uses that you suggested would be accurate. Engineering firms, accounting firms, law firms. Basically any business that runs out of an office would be applicable. Yeah.
I don't want to speak to the 4-story, but I was looking at the architectural, what they're going to do for the buildings and in that area. Is that encompassed in the whole 10 hectare, not just the 4? Like there's, it looks like it's all going to be looking really good.
So the architectural controls are registered on all of the commercial lots in the Stone Ridge development along 68th Avenue.
Okay. Thanks very much. Any further questions for the delegation? Councillor Crow.
Thanks, Mayor Gibbon. Randy, on the apartments on the 2nd and 3rd floor, they're going to be like 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom suites?
So under the existing land use bylaw, under the commercial district that exists today, we could have 2 floors of office space and 2 floors of residential. What we're proposing to do is still build the 4-story building, but have no residential. It'll be all office. And that's the direct control portion of the zoning.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for the delegation? Mr. Glenn, I have one somewhat related. I understand about the essentially the direct control is allowing the buildings to be as tall as a mixed-use building without being mixed use.
Correct.
My question would be, do you know if your clients would have any interest in being allowed to go to a higher building height if they did add a residential component? So above 4 stories, if there was an additional component of residential.
Right. That's a trick question. I think the answer is always yes. I mean, we're always interested in maximizing the use of the land. The way we came up with 4 stories, partially it matches the existing use in terms of the mixed use height, but also we're cognizant of the fact that the sites themselves will only support so much square footage and satisfy the needs for parking and landscaping and other things. So I think, if somebody came along and consolidated a bunch of the parcels, maybe they would be interested in going to a higher ceiling. But as it sits, the parcels range, they're mostly about an acre in size. So 4 stories is about as much as we can get on any one of those lots.
Okay. I see Councillor Rice.
Just to make sure I'm reading this, okay, directly to the south is a residential mix. That's allowed 4 stories, right? So right to the south, adjacent to this property, would be allowed 4 stories for residential. Did I'm reading that right?
So across the road to the south is actually zoned, I think it's RM, so the requirements, they allow whatever's allowed in that zoning, and for sure 4 stories would be allowed.
Okay.
Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I guess as you hear the story, they build it, they will come, but they've already come to that area, and you guys are coming in realizing that area is very popular. And for the city, the traffic's going to pick up, and we're going to have 4 lanes, and that's going to be another bridge, and I know that's going to come down the road. Parking, is it going to be underground parking in this building?
Mr. Glenn?
So the requirements of the land use bylaw requires that we have parking, the required number of parking stalls. At this point, we don't have a building design, so absolutely a possibility that somebody may elect to put parking below grade. I would say that when we sort of looked at the maximum number of stories being 4, we anticipated that most of the parking would be above grade, not below grade.
Okay, no, I was just wondering, besides customers, but professionals for that. Okay.
Mr. Glenn, just one question. You mentioned parking and the number of stalls, and are you aware that the draft land use bylaw, which we have, I think, tonight for second and third reading, actually has some reductions in parking requirements? And so does this draft direct control district reflect those reductions, or would those reductions apply to future developments in the buildings that may exist there?
I believe that the parking requirements is a separate section of the land use bylaw, so we would be subject to, on this property, the same parking standards of the day.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that you're going to be able to take advantage of that wasn't tied up in this direct control. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Rice, did you have something? You're ringing in? Not actually. There you go. There you go.
I just wonder if we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're looking at a land use designation, and we're already talking about what color the drapes are going to be. So
actually, by the direct control district, they're telling us what color the drapes are going to be.
Okay.
Details of the actual controls. So I just wanted to ensure that we weren't locking the proponent into an old set of standards that's going to change tonight, potentially. But as long as that flexibility is there, that's good. Any further questions for the delegation? Mr. Glenn, anything else that you want to present to council?
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other further questions for you, so thanks very much for making the presentation tonight. So this is still the presentation submission portion of the public hearing, an opportunity for anybody who would like to make a presentation regarding this proposed rezoning. Is there anybody else who would like to make a presentation in support? I don't see anybody. I didn't even see nary a twitch out of the crowd. Is there anybody who would like to present in opposition to the proposed rezoning? And again, I don't see anybody coming forward. I'll ask one last time if there's anybody who'd like to make a presentation regarding this proposed rezoning. And if there isn't, then I will close the public hearing. I'd look for business arising from the public hearing. Councillor Rice.
Move second reading of bylaw C1100-200, amendment to the land use bylaw.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Rice. So we have a motion for second reading. Any discussion or debate on that motion? Councillor Wong.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I'm going to speak in favor of the motion. I believe that Grande Prairie needs to use its land base more efficiently, and going into more stories increases our density, means that tax-wise or revenue-wise, we are increasing our efficiency there. It also allows areas that are zoned for commercial to be way more efficient than the way they are currently being used right now. So anytime there's an opportunity to increase the stories, as well as, when there is sufficient buffer, and in this case, there obviously is with the apartment zoning, the medium density residential right behind it. I think that's a very good planning move.
Thanks, Councillor Wong. Any further discussion or debate? Councillor Radburn.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Again, I will be supporting the motion as well. I think it's a great project. It's going to be awesome. I like the way it looks. I like everything about it. But I also wanted to commend the administration here for working with the applicants to make it happen in this way. I think they found a way that there's a win-win for the applicants and the city. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Radburn. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I'm as well with Councillor Wong and Councillor Radburn as well on this. I'm just adding that the four-way and another bridge is going to probably have to be built soon. So the next council is going to have to be looking at some other things as well.
Thanks very much, Councillor McLean. Any further discussion or debate? I would just take an opportunity to add my voice. I certainly support this. I appreciate the increased density. I certainly would have been in support of more stories if anybody wanted to ask for them, to put people to live there. I think that that's one of the things that the City of Grand Prairie desperately needs is more mixed-use development. And so if there was ever a project that was coming forward that was being proposed that needed that increase, then obviously that's something that the applicant could do to bring that forward, but I certainly would support that. Any further discussion or debate from council? Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote. Thank you. The motion for second reading carries. Councillor Rice.
I would move third reading of bylaw C1100-200, an amendment to the land use bylaw.
Thanks very much, Councillor Rice. So any discussion or debate on third and final reading of this land use bylaw amendment? Seeing nobody ringing in, then I will call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries as well. That handles all the business from that public hearing. We move on to item 6.2, bylaw C1260, to adopt a new land use bylaw. Mr. Welton, I'll call this meeting to order and look for an introduction from administration. Mr. Welton.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're recommending that land use bylaw C1260, which is an amendment to adopt, which is a bylaw to adopt the new land use bylaw and rescind the existing bylaw C1100 and all amendments to it, be giving it second and third readings as amended. We also recommend that council direct that C1260 be amended to additionally include the provisions of C1100-200, which council just adopted within bylaw C1260. The existing land use bylaw was adopted in May of 2003 in order to ensure that the regulations contained in it remain current with respect to development trends, community needs, and standards. The city initiated a review in 2010. Proposed land use bylaw is a result of extensive consultation, which included the home builders and land development industries, the Chamber of Commerce, other stakeholders in the public. Two sections regarding seasonal restrictions on RV parking were inadvertently removed from the draft, and therefore we are the as amended document that you have before you has put those provisions back in, and those provisions that have been reintroduced are identical to the provisions in the existing land use bylaw. So there's no change to any regulation there. And the as amended also includes small changes to the map. One was to address a land use bylaw that got adopted 2 weeks ago, or an amendment that got adopted 2 weeks ago. And the second was to address an error in the line that was not identified until after first reading. The Municipal Government Act requires all municipalities to adopt the land use bylaw that conforms to the requirements of the Act. Proposed land use bylaw is the result of extensive public consultation between the city and community stakeholders, including the public, development, and home builder industries. Advertising the public hearing has been undertaken as required, and I did not receive any comments or concerns from anybody in this matter. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks very much for the introduction, Mr. Welton. This is the presentation submission portion of the public hearing. So is there anybody that care to come forward and address council on the topic of our new land use bylaw? Is there anybody from the community that would like to come forward and address council on the new land use bylaw? Again, I don't see anybody. Our delegations are all played out for the evening and have done their business. I don't see anybody else coming forward. Does council have any questions for administration before I move on to closing the public hearing? Councilor McLean.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Just a couple of questions. There was a couple of things left out because they weren't resolved, which will be an ongoing. One, I believe we had a young lady here tonight about lock grading and water. That's one of them. Dan, do you know the other one or two?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. A couple of the items or issues that have been identified for future research were driveway widths. We're looking at development standards for unserviced industrial lots, design standards for queuing spaces within drive-through developments, and research new residential lot, a new residential district that allows 6 stories, were some of the things that we will be bringing forward in the coming months once we do some research. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Any further questions for administration or discussion? Councillor Radburn?
Just quickly, Mayor Given, thank you. I think riparian areas was another one that was parked for a bit. But this has been a long process for those who are watching us or listening. It's a couple of years. Admin at least, and admin has done a lot of work in terms of consultation, particularly with home builders and developers. And there's been a number of improvements. It is a work in progress, as Kevin has suggested and Dan has acknowledged. But I think it's important work for this council, and I'm looking forward to the support of all of council so that we have a new land use bylaw as we move forward. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Radburn. Any further questions for administration? Seeing none, we'll have an opportunity to speak to the land use bylaws. I'll close the public hearing. We'd move to business arising and would look for a motion for second reading to adopt the land use bylaw as amended. Dan noted that there were a couple of amendments that the administration caught since it was last year. Councillor Munro.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I'll move that second reading be given to bylaw C 1260 to adopt a new land use bylaw.
Thanks very much, Councillor Munro. Any discussion or debate on second reading? Councillor Wong.
I want to speak in favor of the motion and really do commend administration for all the work that's been done over the years and council too. This was a large project, and a project like this that gets undertaken once every, 15, 20 years, something like that. And although we know that it isn't perfect right now, there are a lot of outstanding items that are going to be brought forward, and then we'll amend this bylaw in the future. Some of the great things that happened there was there was some red tape removed from our development permitting system where the small projects like decks and sheds no longer need those permits. We also have, as Mayor Given mentioned before, reduced parking requirements, which I think is very conducive to building a city that's welcoming for developers, because trying to meet those parking requirements can be very difficult sometimes. The other thing is some of the definitions in there now reduce or eliminate a lot of ambiguity. There were some terms that were used, such as the RL district, which is a low density residential, which is kind of counterintuitive to what's actually happening there. When you say low density, you think that you're spreading the lots out a little bit more, when those are in fact narrow lot developments. So we changed that designation. And the other thing that I thought was really a good point to add in this land use bylaw was the addition of alternative energy, small wind generators and solar power panels that can be added to people's homes should they want to do that. They now have the ability to do that. So plenty more good news items in there, but those are the ones I wanted to highlight.
Thanks very much, Councillor Wong. Councillor Rice.
I was very impressed with the process. I think it was the most exhaustive, consultative process we've ever gone through in the city of Grand Prairie. I think the staff really walked the extra mile to make sure that all voices who wanted to be heard were heard, and their input was, for the most part, incorporated into the bylaw. So I think it was an extremely good process.
Thanks very much, Councillor Rice. Any further discussion or debate? Councillor O'Toole.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Given. I agree. I think we have to thank also the home builders and UDI and all those other people that had input in there. There were some good discussions that were brought up. This has been a long 2.5, 3 years process. And I've sat in on a few meetings, and to hear what the home builders and our staff once again had communicated with and had good discussions, the pros and the cons, and where we should go. So hats off to everybody involved in this process. Excellent job.
Thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. Any further discussion or debate on the motion? I just also want to add my congratulations to administration. I think this is actually very nearly 3 years in the making, so just about the entire council term. So I'm really pleased that administration's been able to work with the community, and that we were able to adopt this before the end of the term, and so we can have it off of the plate for the next council so they can work on other items that will come before them. Councillor Wong, thanks very much for highlighting some of the major changes in the bylaw. Just with regard to parking, I want to stress that we've in many places removed the minimums, which essentially allows the development community to take a business case look at how much parking they need. We have not, we're not saying that you have to have, we're not requiring less parking. We're saying make a good decision about what it will take for you to build a development that will be successful. And I think that that's the right approach, particularly with regards to the downtown area. So before I close discussion and debate portion, I see a note from administration. Community Growth Director.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to indicate procedurally that we have just dealt with an amendment to our land use bylaw, and prior to giving a second reading to the new land use bylaw, I would request a separate motion to be able to incorporate the amendment, which was C1100-200, into the new land use bylaw.
Thanks very much for that catch. So I just want to be clear, our agenda doesn't have it laid out maybe the same way as it has in the past. And so just so that we're clear on process, the motion that administration requires right now is the motion to amend to incorporate the additional the provisions of bylaw C1100-200. So what we're actually looking for is a motion, Councillor Monroe, to amend bylaw C1260 to include bylaw C1100-200. I see administration nodding that I've got it right. So, Councillor Monroe, was that the motion that you were looking to make? Councillor Monroe?
I think you said it right. Bang on there. You want me to repeat that?
Yes.
I see Councillor Rice. Councillor Rice?
We have to rescind the old bylaw before we adopt the new one?
Community Growth Director?
Mr. Mayor, the new bylaw includes the provision to repeal. The new bylaw includes the provision to repeal the previous land use bylaw.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much for that clarification and for that catch in process. So, Councillor Monroe, your motion is to amend the new land use bylaw C1260 to include the provisions of bylaw C1100-200, which was just passed here tonight.
Correct.
Thanks very much, Councillor Monroe. Any further discussion or debate in that motion? Seeing none, then I'll call for the motion to amend the new land use bylaw. Thank you. That motion carries. The new land use bylaw has been amended to include the provisions of of C1100-200, and we can move on to a motion for second reading of bylaw C1260. Councillor Monroe.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Given. I'll move that we give, or the council give second reading to bylaw C1260 to adopt a new land use bylaw.
Thanks very much, Councillor Monroe. Any discussion or debate on second reading of the new land use bylaw as amended? Seeing none, then I will call for the vote. Thank you. And that motion carries. Councillor Monroe.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I'll move that third reading be given to bylaw C1260 to adopt a new land use bylaw. And are we including schedules A and H?
We need a motion to include the schedules. I'm just looking to administration. Thank you. The schedules form part of the bylaw, and so it's not necessary. Thank you. Thanks very much, Councillor Monroe. Any discussion or debate on third reading of bylaw C1260? Seeing none, then I will call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. We'll move on then to unfinished business, of which we had none. We had no reports. We do have committee business, though, and that we would start with item 9.1, the Community Growth Committee from September 3rd, 2013. I have a motion for that set of minutes. Councillor Gustafson.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I'll move that council receive the minutes of the Community Growth Committee meeting held September 3rd, 2013, as amended to reflect that the committee approved the direction under item 1.1.
Thanks very much, Councillor Gustafson, for that motion. So just a note there, the 1.1 is the item that we deleted from our agenda. The committee gave direction to administration and it did not need to come here to council. So thanks for that catch on that amendment to the minutes. Any discussion or debate on that set of minutes? Seeing nothing, then I will call for the vote. Thank you. And that motion carries. Councillor Gustafson.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I'll move the council direct Mayor Given to write a letter to the MLAs to request that Build Canada funds be allocated on a population basis rather than a competitive process, and further request to meet with the MLAs to discuss the process. This was an initiative by our mayor in order to advocate our provincial government for more and improved funding.
Thanks very much, Councillor Gustafson. Any discussion or debate on the motion? Just to speak to this, this is the Build Canada Fund, as Councillor Rice highlighted a while ago, has been approved by the federal government after the lobbying of FCM, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. They're in discussions now with the provincial government of how they're going to deliver that money in the province of Alberta. And this motion is intended for council to start to try to influence how they'll deliver that money in a way that will be beneficial to the city of Grand Prairie. So any discussion or debate on that motion? Seeing nothing, then I'll call for the vote. One more, council. Thank you. And that motion carries. Councillor Gustafson, anything else you want to highlight from that set of minutes?
No, sir, we've covered it all. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Gustafson. Councillor O'Toole, Combative Sports Commission.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Given. I make a recommendation the council receive the minutes of the Combative Sports Commission meeting held September 4th, 2013.
Thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. Any discussion or debate on that set of minutes? Did anyone catch any errors or omissions? Seeing nothing, then I will call for the vote. Thank you. And that motion carries. Councillor O'Toole.
Yes, 9.2.1 Combative Sports Commission Bylaw C-1173C. Recommendation is to give first reading to this bylaw. And if I could just speak a little bit about it. We have some proposed bylaw amendments. When the Combative Sports Commission was first started, there was some fees that were associated to some of the referees and also the doctor fees. And we've made some amendments to cover the actual cost, not the perceived costs. And that's where we're at right now.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. So we have a motion for first reading. There's no discussion or debate on first reading. I would look for a vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor O'Toole.
Just another update too as well. There's some medical requirements that are pretty much a national standard that's more suited with the Nevada state rules, if you're familiar with that. So our rules are not any different than any other commission throughout the Canada. We're more, you start here, you can finish here kind of thing, and everything is consistent.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole.
I'd like to give that we give a second reading to bylaw C-1173C, Combative Sports Commission.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. So motion for second reading. Any discussion or debate on second reading? Councillor McLean.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Given. I noticed that some of these events are be held at the Tech Center. So is this going on? Does the county have a Combative Sports Commission? Because it is happening in the county's area, not in the city, on probably half of these events. Just a question to Councillor O'Toole.
Yes, I can tell you that the county is represented on this commission, and we are in negotiations with some stuff that's actually in camera right now, but there'll be a surprise here in the very near future.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor McLean. Any further discussion or debate on second reading? Seeing none, then I will call for the vote. Looking for a couple more.
Not letting me. There we go.
Thanks very much. That motion carries for second reading, so we can have a motion to have third reading here tonight. Councillor O'Toole.
And that the council have third reading bylaw C-1173C, Combative Sports Commission.
Thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. So in order to have all three readings of a bylaw in one council meeting, we have to have this motion. For us to move on to third reading, this motion must carry unanimously. If it does not, then it would this business would come back at a future council meeting. So any discussion or debate on the merits of having third reading here tonight? Seeing none, then I will call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries, so that means we can have third reading. Councillor O'Toole.
And I'd like to make that happen, so I'd like to suggest that bylaw C-1173C be given third reading tonight.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. Any discussion or debate on third reading of bylaw C-1173C? Seeing none, then I will call for the vote. Shouldn't have to.
Raise your hand.
Well, we'll get IT to look at that. I see you're
here.
tapping that enough times that it should have registered. Thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. I'll close the voting, and that motion carries as well.
Thank you very much.
Councillor O'Toole, is there anything else that you wanted to highlight from that set of Combative Sports Commission meeting minutes?
We do have a couple of things here, but we're still in. There were some items that came up, and they're under review right now, and I'll divulge that information later. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. So we move on to 9.3, the Community Living Committee from September 3rd, 2013. Councillor Crokin, was that your set of minutes?
Yes.
If you're not going to ring in, you have to turn on your own microphone.
Okay, there we go. I did it. I move council receive the minutes of the Community Living Committee meeting held September 3rd, 2013.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Crokin. Did anyone note any errors or omissions in that set of minutes? Seeing nothing, then I will call for the vote. Thank you. And that motion carries. Councillor Crokin, anything? Oh, you do have one item of business.
We have one motion, Mayor Given. Council make a commitment to the Grand Prairie Public School District 2357 to find community office space at the Isabel Campbell School to a maximum of $500,000. And I'll just speak briefly to that. It's office space similar to what we do have at Mother Teresa and Maud Clifford schools. This is the Isabel Campbell School in the Pinnacle neighborhood, and it's just in the building stage. So this is a prime time for us to get maximum coverage for our dollar, and it's up to $500,000. So it's very good for that part of the city. They don't have any of our potential of the creating community office space within that area. So that school will just be perfect for it. I urge everyone to vote in favor.
Thanks very much, Councillor Crokin. I see Councillor Rice in the queue. Councillor Rice.
I'm just wanting some clarification on the process. Should we refer this item to the budget sessions, or do we pass our concurrence of it? But if we pass our concurrence of it, we're making budget decisions ahead of time.
Yes, Councillor Rice, that's right. At the committee meeting, administration had actually recommended a specific funding source, and the motion that was made at committee was intended to allow this to come forward with a more flexible funding source. So administration already has a plan of where they intend to make the money, and yes, we're making a budget commitment. The reason, though, for that is the province of Alberta, as they design the school, needs to know whether the city of Grand Prairie is in or out starting September, by the end of September 30th. And so,
thank you. It just seemed a little bit, it was just the process, our normal process was kind of backwards to our normal process. But okay, thank you.
He's on top of it.
Councillor Wong.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. Can anyone tell me what kind of examples of community organizations would use this office space? And is this leasable space, or are they getting that space for no cost?
I can speak to that, Councillor Wong. This is an item that was discussed with the school boards in a partnership exploring session. The intent is that it would be leasable space that the City of Grand Prairie would control and manage. So the City of Grand Prairie would be responsible for managing which tenants or what functions would be in that space. It's intended to be a range of community organizations, anything from, and these would all be potential possible uses, anything from neighborhood association offices to not-for-profit groups, small community agencies, to health providers that may have some good cross functions with the school, to potentially even other city services that may make sense to locate into the neighborhood. So it is a very flexible space. It's intended to be planned in such a way that it allows distinct and separate access to the offices from the regular school traffic during the day, but in the evening would allow those community offices to be able to access a wing of the school where they would be able to take advantage of the classrooms and thereby get better use out of the public investment in the school facility than we do otherwise.
Sounds great.
Councillor McLean?
Just an add-on, thank you, Mayor Given. When I was thinking, when they brought it forward to committee, was like for the Regional Sports Council Committee, could be an office for them as well. So I thought it was a great idea.
Thanks very much, Councillor McLean. Any further discussion or debate on the motion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Looks like you may have to lick your finger again there, Councillor O'Toole. Thank you very much. And that motion carries. Councillor Crokin, did you have any other items that you wanted to highlight from that set of minutes?
Yes, there was a number of delegations, but Councillor McLean just gave a little segue into what I was going to talk about. Mr. Lee Goldie, he's the chairperson of the new Grand Prairie Sports Council. It is a regional council. It's formed now. They've had their AGM. Their board is in place. It was really exciting. They had their whole board was at the community living meeting. And one of their modus operandi was they needed a little bit of cash. But we referred the motion to budget 2014. So it's going to create an awful lot of sports tourism for the Grand Prairie region and area. So we're very excited. It works very good in other areas, the Red Deers, the Lethbridges, the Medicine Hats. So that Mr. Goldie had quite a nice package to give all of us. So we wish them all the best. That's everything.
Thanks very much, Councillor Crokin. Then we move on to item 9.4, the Community Safety Committee from September 10th. And we'll look to Councillor Wong. Councillor Wong?
Thank you, Mayor Given. I move that Council receive the minutes of the Community Safety Committee meeting held September 10th, 2013.
Thanks very much, Councillor Wong. Any discussion or debate on that set of minutes? Did anyone note any errors or omissions? Seeing nothing, then I'll call for the vote. Thank you. And that motion carries. Councillor Wong, anything that you wanted to highlight from that set of minutes?
Yes, I'm going to move item 9.4.1 that was missed on our council packages, but it was included in the minutes. I move that council award tender T62-552-13 for the 2013 Muskasippi Park entrance features. That's on 102nd Street and 105th Avenue. Entrances to K. Shaw & Sons, 2009 Limited, in the amount of $435,661, excluding GST, as the only qualified tender. And I would thank Councillor Munro for pointing that out, that was a missing item that was approved at committee and recommended to come to council tonight. In speaking to this really briefly, this was the final step in some of the work that was already done for Muskasippi Park. The idea was to give it a little bit of a revival for our centennial celebration for next year. So the only way to get that ready by then is to make sure that the tender was awarded this year. K. Shaw & Sons was the only qualified tender. Everyone seems to be really busy right now. They did manage to, our administration managed to fit this into their budgeted amount, into the budget, even though this was slightly higher than what council had budgeted. There was some savings realized in other areas, and they were able to move that, make that work within their overall budget.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor Wong. Any discussion or debate on the motion? Seeing none, then I will call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. Councillor Wong, anything else you want to highlight from that set of minutes?
Yes, we had a delegation come out and talk to us about the parking in the neighborhood around the Hillside area and the Mountain View area. In particular, the fact that hospital employees were parking in the residential areas and in some cases causing quite a bit of conflict between the residents there by encroaching on their driveways and things like that, and possibly also causing issues when it was garbage pickup day, because as you have a lot of vehicles there, you do need that 1 meter separation in order for the garbage truck to come by and be able to pick up the bin with the automatic arm. So we discussed many possible options. Administration is going to come back with a report. One of the things they're going to look at is the feasibility of utilizing metered parking in the hospital area, or especially in the immediate area following it. We found that there were other solutions that were looked at, but they seem to just move the problem around. And the fact that the hospital is there and will probably stay operational even after the new hospital is up and running, that this could be an ongoing problem. So they're going to look at parking, metered parking as a potential funding for neighborhood improvements, and they are going to consider the solid waste and snow removal around that. We also directed administration at the committee level to look at paving this parking lot, which is immediately adjacent to City Hall across the tracks. That is city-owned land, and the lease for that Alberta Health Services has for their overflow or their staff parking has come due, and they need to look at renewing that. But part of the agreement was to pave that eventually, so we'd like to see that happen sooner rather than later. Otherwise, or maybe in conjunction with the fact that that could end up being paid metered parking just because of the demand.
Thanks very much, Councillor Wong. So I believe that handled all of our committee business. We had no items of correspondence this evening, I believe. We did have delegation business. The first was Ms. Ramsanker with her concern around drainage on her property. So I'd look for a motion to deal with that piece of delegation business. Councillor Munro.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I would assume that with this, we would maybe refer this to the Community Safety Committee and maybe have administration follow up to see what's taken place so far. Does that?
I think so. A motion to refer this to the Community.
Yeah, I would move that we refer this to the Community Safety Committee and for follow up.
And I'm just hearing from the city manager, he's recommending community growth. Given that it deals with development services, I think is the recommendation.
Okay, even though there's the bylaw issue in there? Yeah, it'd still get covered through
development, yeah.
Okay, well, it's to the appropriate committee.
To the appropriate committee, and I believe if it's community growth, then we would have an opportunity to get an update tomorrow, given that we have community living and community growth tomorrow. So that actually would have the fastest response in this as well.
Okay, that sounds perfect. I'd make that motion.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Munro. So discussion or debate on the motion of referral to the Community Growth Committee. Councillor Radburn.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Certainly I will support the motion. I would hope that administration would have some background for us at the committee meeting tomorrow rather than having to wait another 2 weeks. So I would hope that administration is hearing that we need some background and possible solutions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Radburn. Any further discussion or debate on the motion? Seeing none, then I will call for the vote. I'm looking for one more. Thank you. That motion carries. So that motion has been referred to the Community Growth Committee meeting, which meets tomorrow is that our afternoon again? 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. So that will be on the committee meeting 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Our other item of business was from Lance and Robin, the issue around parking along 92nd Street. Can I have a motion to deal with that item? Councillor Rice.
Going to move, we refer this item to the appropriate committee, whatever we're calling Dan's committee this week. So I'll just say the appropriate committee, and again, an in-depth report of options, and certainly I would assume I think it's Mr. Galante's committee would be looking at the option that was put forward by these people this evening.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor Rice. So that motion is to refer it to what is the Community Safety Committee. That committee would meet not next Tuesday, but the one after, so a week from tomorrow. Any discussion or debate on that motion? Seeing none, then I will call for the vote. Thank you. And that motion carries. I believe that handles all of our items of delegation business. And we had no notices of motion tonight. So we would move to Councilmember Roundtable, and we'll start with Councillor Radburn.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Appreciate the opportunity to go first. Thank you. September 4th, I attended with other members of council the infill development visioning session at Muskogee Park. We had a good discussion, talked about some ideas, and there'll be a follow-up report in the public forum. On the 5th, I attended the Regional Seniors Transportation meeting, where I spoke about our sharing of bus with Grand Spirit Foundation. It was deemed as one of best practices in the region, so I was pleased to be able to make that report. September 7th was the Parkinson Alberta Step and Stride, and thank you to my colleagues who joined us for that walk. The 8th, I went to the county sportsplex opening, and then in the afternoon attended the Highland Park area potluck, where they were talking about some safety things, but also talking about naming a little park they have there, just kind of south and east of Lions Park. That's where that little area is. The 11th, I attended the morning of the Take Pride community tour, which was well attended and very informative. In the afternoon, I went to Wild Rose Villa's award ceremony, and then in the afternoon, I attended the GPREP, Grand Prairie Regional Emergency Partnership meeting with our 5 neighboring municipalities, where the 2 topics of the agenda were mainly budget and logo. On the 12th, I attended the chamber mixer at the college, and then we had a Grand Prairie Regional Tourism Association board meeting at noon. 13th, we had arts development meeting. Maybe Councillor Monroe may speak to more in depth. And then in the evening, I went to Mad Moose Mayhem at Grand Prairie Live Theatre, attended the gala reception that was hosted by the Grand Prairie Century Play Society as a fundraiser. Don and I were able to take that in. And on the 15th, I was able to bring greetings and start the walk for the Buddy Walk. A Buddy Walk is the first ever in Grand Prairie, and it's in support of the Down Syndrome Society. And they're looking at developing a support group and supporting advocacy and research more nationally as well. And that's my report. Thank you, Mayor Given.
Thanks very much, Councillor Radburn. So we move to Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you, Mayor Given. On the 4th, I also attended the infill development visioning workshop. It was very interesting. We had members of the city planning and other parts of the community involved in this discussion. On the 5th, I attended the Poverty Reduction Strategic meeting. A number of agencies that are looking forward to reduce poverty in this area, the northern Alberta and Grand Prairie area. The annual general meeting for the Philip J. Currie Dinosaur Museum I attended as well on the 6th. The GP Parkinson's Walk fundraiser, I was there and I did walk a little bit. On the 8th, I attended the County of Grand Prairie Sportsplex. I showed up a little bit late, but I had my grandchildren with me, so we got to do all kinds of good things. I got to meet a very legendary Hockey Hall of Famer. And we attended the car show and also the Toys for Tots motorcycle show and car show. We also, later that day, attended the Neighborhood Safety Highland Park Name the Park event, and I was over at Lions Park that day, and the place was crowded. There was 7 birthday parties taking place that day. On the 9th, I went to the foreign workers attraction presentation. It was hosted by the Alberta government. A number of community groups were attending. Foreign workers were there to hear what had to be said, and also a lot of businesses were there. And it opened up my eyes to a lot of the concerns that we have in this community and this region. I attended the library board meeting on the 10th. We've got a lot of stuff planned in the near future, and starting this weekend, we've actually got lots of events well planned as well. On the 11th, I partaked in the Take Pride community tour. Very educational. It's good to see the background on all of the stuff that this community group has put together, and it was really nice to see and get a good understanding of where we're at. The 12th, I attended the Chamber of Commerce College Mixer, GPRC. Got to hear some fine words from the president, Don Natchik. I also attended the Reading University fundraiser later that day. On the 13th, I attended the Firefighter Golf Tournament, the first one held in Grand Prairie. It was very well attended, and they raised a substantial amount of money. On the 14th, I attended the Putting on the Ritz Community Foundation, and I want to thank Tracy Vavrick, her husband Vince, and all the people that made this happen. It was a great event, and I'm thankful for participating in that. And today I went to the Eastlink Center, and we met up with Minister Drysdale, Minister MLA McDonald, and the Minister of Tourism, Mr. Stark, and we showcased our big pearl in Grand Prairie, the Eastlink Center. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Toole. Councillor Munro.
Thanks very much, Mayor Given. On the 4th, I attended the infill development visioning workshop with a number of councillors. On the 7th, also took part briefly for the Parkinson Step and Stride down at Muskosipi Park, and I wanted to thank Councillor Radburn. I know he's left already, but he emceed that event and did a fine job. On the 8th, went out to the county sportsplex ribbon cutting, and it was very well attended, and they've got a pretty nice looking facility out there. It's going to be great out there. On the 11th, took part in the Take Pride community tour, and had the opportunity to see a whole bunch of different venues around town, and even took in some disc golf with fellow councillors and community members. On the 12th, was also at the Chamber Mixer at GPRC early in the morning. On the 13th, chaired the Arts Development Committee meeting, and the minutes for this meeting aren't out yet. We'll go through them at next council meeting. However, I did want to just remind everyone that we've got $50,000 in grants available through the 100th anniversary celebration grant application. So I'd really like to encourage people to put in an application for an event to help celebrate the 100th anniversary through arts and culture. The funds are only going to be there for a limited amount of time, and you can apply for up to 20% of the $50,000. So if you've got an idea and you think you can tie it in with our 100th anniversary, we'd sure love to hear from you. Applications are available through the city's website. On the 14th, I was also at the Community Foundation Gala, and actually was lucky enough to be seated next to Malcolm Hunter, who is the president and COO of Healy Harley Davidson Canada, and listened to his keynote speech, and as well as chatted with him, and a very dynamic person to listen to. So it was quite an honor. And then today toured the Eastlink Center with Dr. Starkey, who is Minister of Tourism.
And that's it. Thanks very much, Councillor Munro. Councillor Crokin.
Thank you, Mayor Given. On September the 6th, I attended on behalf of council the EMS 14th annual golf fundraiser tournament at the Grand Prairie Golf Country Club. On September the 11th, I attended the Lost Firefighters ceremony at our South Fire Hall. It was a very, very well done ceremony. Then later on that day, along with yourself, Mayor Given, I attended the Special Olympics Winter Games media report reception, and we were very happy to say that we, not us, but they have required the games in February, I think it's 2021, 22, you can correct me if I'm wrong, in 2015. And that was everything.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor Crokin. Councillor Rice.
I attended the Alberta Care Recycling Conference in Slave Lake. It was extremely gratifying to see the credit that was given to Grand Prairie in the initiation of recycling in northern Alberta, all across northern Alberta. And there were many people, I believe, that believed for a part of the conference that we had sent Councillor McLean as the entertainment. They did a Deal or No Deal fundraiser, of which I drew 10 tickets for 10 briefcases, 3 of which were Councillor McLean. So he was their best customer at the silent auction. I, too, attended the Fire Hall Fallen Firefighter ceremony on September 11th. And I attended the Community Foundation dinner, and they did their usual superb job. I attended the funeral yesterday of Loretta Thompson-Lewis. Loretta was one of the original female polo players in the world. Which was, I hadn't realized that till it was put there. So, thereby, really reflecting Grand Prairie's can-do attitude on the world stage. So, condolences to Dr. Cled Lewis and her family. That's it.
Thanks very much, Councillor Rice. Councillor Gustafson.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I did one thing this last 2 weeks, being on my way out the door here. I opened some tenders for a city for some tempered glass, for some fence painting, some firearms upgrades and lighting. Fire alarm upgrades and lighting design, and some heating and cooling upgrades. Thank you very much, Mayor Given.
Thanks very much, Councillor Gustafson. Councillor Wong.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Given. On the 4th, I attended the Infill Development Workshop Visioning session. I just wanted to say a couple of things about that. For those people out there who don't know what infill development is, those are areas of our city that are ready for redevelopment. They could also be vacant lots that you see in the city, or lots that are really awkward to develop, so that therefore they haven't been developed yet. And that session really helped us to look at some examples of some good examples of what's happened in the city and some bad examples of what's happened in the city, and look at how the city can encourage more infill development, which allows us to be more efficient in our land use within the city. So that was a really good session. I think staff are planning to do more of those for the incoming council. And those ones really, they help us to look at ways where the city can encourage development that we want to see in the city, as opposed to just allowing the free market to just put up whatever is the most profitable. Hopefully those two goals align, but they don't always, and we've seen some examples of that within the city. So I just wanted to compliment staff on that first session, and I'm really happy that they're looking at putting some other ones in place for council. September 7th, I participated in the Parkinson's Walk at Muskosipi Park. September 8th, I was present at the grand opening of the county's Sportsplex. I thought that was a beautiful facility. It complements our Eastlink Center very nicely. September 11th, I attended the morning session of the Take Pride community tour with members of that committee, as well as some members of the community as well. Really enjoyed that, and it was unfortunately I wasn't able to make the second half of that, and I hope that they do more of them and break them up into morning and afternoon sessions, so I have the ability to take some time off, because even as just a general member of the community coming up, I think I'm going to really enjoy seeing those good news stories and all the successes that people in the community and this committee have been able to contribute to Grand Prairie. September 14th, I attended the Community Foundation Gala. September 15th, the mayor and I were at the Terry Fox Run, and the mayor showed his vast experience in singing "O Canada," which I know he's been doing for the last, how many years now? 12 years, yeah. Yeah, so good to say it was all in key. And it was a very good event. It was held at the Pavilion at Crystal Lake. We had a pretty good turnout there. I think that area is definitely underutilized for community events, very highly utilized by the residents that live around that area. So it's a beautiful place to visit, and people should use it more. September 16th, today we had a Center 2000 board meeting. There wasn't really much to report on, except that we are going to have a reception for the recognition of funders of the renovation project. There was a renovation that was done in the past year in the Al Robertson room and the community kitchen, as well as the coffee station there. And people who have gone into the building have seen that all take place, but we haven't had an official reception yet. So look in your mailboxes, or keep an eye on your mailboxes, because that's going to happen. You're going to see an invitation in there, and a recognition plaque is going to go up. The City of Grand Prairie was one of the funders, but there was several funders, and they'll all be invited to that.
Thanks very much, Councillor Wong. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mayor Given. As with Councillor Rice, we attended the 14th Annual Alberta Recycling Conference 20-year anniversary in Slave Lake, September 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. I'm just going to speak to a couple things on this, because I really love this conference. And yes, there's some fun to have, but there's a lot of work in listening about new incentives. I was really excited to go to Slave Lake because, as we all know, there was a big fire there, and about 80% of the area has been rebuilt. And I walked around there a couple times, and you see businesses being rebuilt in the process now. And some of the areas where the fire burnt, it took the whole blocks out. And then there's other areas where every fourth house is standing, and they got new houses all around, houses that are 30 years old. So it's really remarkable to see how the construction is coming along. And I'm very glad to see it. So the town's really starting to pick up again. Another thing that popped out was they had, I believe, 2 major sites for modular homes for people that were displaced families. And one of them, I don't know why, but they built it on a muskeg. And the Alberta government had to put $16 million in gravel just to sustain these trailers in that one area. So, yeah, that was one. And now these modulars, there's still some people living in a few, but most of them are empty. They're bringing them down south to where all the water damage was, so they're being reused. Another one I thought was really good, and I believe it's the future. It's already planted in Ontario. It's plastic to oil. And if you put that on Google, plastic to oil, they actually have a plant in Ontario. They're starting to do it. And it takes like 8.3 pounds of plastic and will convert it to 1 gallon of fuel. So this is the future, and it's already here in Canada, and it's going to get bigger. Another one I'm very proud of, to met and talk to the individual. As you know, on top of our city hall, we have some solar panels. And the fellow's name is Gordon Howe, and I would like to see him in the next council come up and speak to the city and to developers. He actually, with Nate, helped put up their solar panels to mark for angle of the sun and everything like that. And now they're going with Nate for snow load. And he's very, very good. And he brought up one where we've heard of Performance Arts Center, the last few years in Grand Prairie. Not yet here, but if that gets better. Camrose is building a new performing arts center. A big, new, beautiful building, and so many stories of it. All the windows are going to be solar panels. It's going to produce a lot of electricity within the building. So this is the future, and it's going to get stronger, not weaker. So another one I wanted to say, I was very proud. This is probably one of the best conferences I've ever gone to, because Councillor Rice never spoke too much about it, but she was one of the founders, and she was recognized for that, and I was very proud to be there and present for that. where there was an idea within the city, and then to spread it out to 36, 37 communities, and all of a sudden to the rest of Alberta, and from Alberta Care to Alberta Recycling Comparables. So hats off to Councillor Rice, because there was a big recognition there for her on behalf of that, and I just had to repeat that. And there was good representation. We had Councillor Rice, myself, and Michelle Gardner. I believe there was 10 from the county of Grand Prairie that were there. So I was glad to attend and hope to attend more. September 11th, I also took part in Take Pride community tour. And one of the biggest things I want to say thank you to Councillor Monroe for incentive in the Environment Committee about the wrap of the boxes. We took a look at one, but you're seeing them unveil around the city. It's quite amazing what's happening, and I think it's very good. And if somebody does graffiti and we get at it quick, we can clean it off right away. And it's really bringing character in our community and our neighborhood. So thank you, Councillor Monroe. And on September 16th, I was at a Center 2000 board meeting today. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor McLean. So I'll try to be brief on the events that I've attended that have already been mentioned. On September 3rd, I attended at St. Pat's School as the AMA kicked off their school patroller program for the year and reminded motorists that students are back in school. On September 4th, I attended the City of Grand Prairie's corporate orientation, where we welcomed new employees to the organization, and later that day, I attended the infill visioning session that's already been mentioned. September 5th, I made a presentation to the Chamber of Commerce Board regarding annexation. And on September 6th, I was at the EMS 14th Annual Golf Classic for Life golf tournament. It was a fantastic tournament that was put on, and appreciated all the community partners coming out to support the EMS Foundation. Later that afternoon or that evening, I was at the Storm at the Crystal Center for the opening of the Grand Prairie Storm's AJHL season. It was an honor to be able to drop the puck on the season and see our Storm team go on to win 2 games that weekend. So it probably had something to do with the guy who dropped the puck. That evening after the Storm puck drop, I attended over at the Holiday Inn, where there was a fundraiser on for Odyssey House towards their second stage shelter. I wanted to congratulate the Holiday Inn, actually. I believe that they organized this fundraiser in support of Odyssey House and just asked Odyssey House to show up. So great to see the Holiday Inn taking those kind of steps to support community organizations. I would note that it was relatively lightly attended, which was disappointing to see, but certainly appreciate and want to recognize the fact that the Holiday Inn took it upon themselves to organize that in support of a great community project. On September 7th, I attended at the Parkinson Step and Stride to help kick off the race, the walk. September 8th, Saturday, I was at the grand opening of the County Sportsplex, and later that afternoon, I was at the meeting of the Highland Park Neighborhood Safety Team. Highland Park Neighborhood Safety Team. September 9th, I also attended the session put on regarding attracting and retaining temporary foreign workers. My intent on being here was to understand an issue that's very significant for a number of the employers in our region and really critical to the economy of our region and our city. September 10th, I had a meeting with representatives from the Primary Care Network here in Grand Prairie, and we'll see some correspondence coming from them on a future committee agenda. On September 11th, I also attended the memorial and moment of silence for firefighters lost in the line of duty or lost to work-related illnesses, which is, I think, something that's highly overlooked. Firefighters, in the course of their duties, come in close contact with all variety of forms of noxious substances, and so cancers are a leading cause of death, unfortunately, for firefighters. And so appreciated the fact that our firefighters local put on that moment to memorialize the firefighters who've passed in the last year. Later that day, I was here at City Hall and met with representatives of 7 Generations Energy. This is a oil and gas company, exploration company, that has a $400 million property just south of the city that they're developing. They are headquartered in the city of Grand Prairie, and their CEO has actually bought a house in the area as well, and so he's chosen to move here. He is very committed to the Grand Prairie region and committed to ensuring that his company is a Grand Prairie company rather than, as we see with many of the others, a Calgary company. So certainly recognize 7 Generation Energy for that and appreciate them being here. Later that day, I was at Center 2000 for the announcement of the 2015 Special Olympics dates and games here in Grand Prairie. After that, I was back here at City Hall for a meeting with the Métis with the Métis Housing Corporation representatives. And on September 12th, I was at the Chamber Morning Mixer at Grand Prairie Regional College, followed by the Seven Generations golf tournament, which was in support of the Community Foundation. My understanding is that they raised in the six figures range, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars out of that tournament. And it was fantastic to see a number of companies that I don't see at many other community events. I think Seven Generations used their $400 million development to influence a lot of their partners that serve their company and provide services to their company to come to the aid of the hospital foundation. So I really appreciate the fact that they did that. On the 13th, I drove up to Spirit River for the Northern Alberta Elected Leaders meeting. The highlight of that meeting for me, aside from sharing information with other leaders from across the region, was a presentation from Alberta Transportation. They highlighted some of the significant projects that they had been undertaking over the course of the last year, and some that were upcoming. In that list, they recognized that they had just awarded a tender for lights at the Grand Prairie Airport intersection. So that tender is actually closed. That $1.5 million project is a cost share between the Grand Prairie Airport and Alberta Transportation. The contractor has been selected, and those lights, the contractor has until the middle of next year, summer of 2014, to have that project complete. Saturday, September 14th, I had lunch with representatives from Edmonton International Airport Authority, the president of WestJet Encore, and representatives from the Renaissance Hotel, which is the new hotel that's being constructed attached to the Edmonton International Airport. Had a chance to speak about the importance of air service to the Grand Prairie region and to our community, and also to let the WestJet folks know that we appreciate the increase in frequency that we've seen with the introduction of the Q400 planes, but that their morning service to Edmonton in particular is lacking, and actually is a reason why many business travelers choose not to fly with them. They have fantastic service to Calgary, but unfortunately, if you're looking to get to Edmonton for a morning meeting, you're flying with the competition. The president assured me that they were looking for ways to repatriate those travelers, and so hopefully WestJet will look to address that in the future. And later that evening, I also attended the Community Foundation Gala. On Sunday the 15th, I attended the opening of the Terry Fox Run that Councillor Wong noted. Councillor Wong, thanks very much for backing me up in O Canada. If anybody missed that inside joke, there was nobody there to sing O Canada. MC was looking around for something and said, well, I do it at Council, I do it at Rotary, I could probably do it here. I said, all I have to do is do the O, and everybody else will fall in. So it worked out okay, but Councillor Wong backed me up. After the Terry Fox Run, I quickly departed and headed across town to the Elks Hall, where I joined in the celebration of the second anniversary of the Grand Prairie chapter of the Jesus is Lord Church. They were celebrating their second anniversary of milestone, and certainly appreciated the fact that they're growing their community here in Grand Prairie. On the 16th, which was this morning, I was here at City Hall to make a proclamation for Cerebral Palsy Day in Grand Prairie. I was joined by Miss Regan Funk and her parents here as we were able to do a photo op, and Regan is going to take back that proclamation to her school and help educate her school about cerebral palsy. This afternoon at lunch, I attended the Pomeroy Hotel to bring greetings to the Alberta Visitor Information Center's program delegates. About 60 delegates from across the province from visitor information centers like our center, like happens at Center 2000 through the Tourism Association, were having their conference, their annual conference here in Grand Prairie. It was the first time they've ever hosted it in the north. We certainly appreciate the opportunity to have them here. And then, as was previously mentioned, I was at the Eastlink Center to give a tour of the facility to Dr. Richard Starkey. Also had an opportunity to discuss with him the expansion of the Grand Prairie Airport and its importance in terms of making connections to the rest of the world, our need for Canadian Border Services Agency to locate here, to have customs available, and also wanted to highlight the adoption of our sports tourism strategy and the founding of our sports council. And I identified, given that recreation is one of the things in his portfolio, that he may want to consider operational funding for sports councils across the province, given that it's something that is replicatable in other communities and can have a big impact in tourism and recreation across the province. And with that, we'll call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.